Hey everyone, it's that math magician, and on this video, I'd like to talk about exponential equations and how we can use it to help us model and solve different problems. So we have our generic exponential equation, which is y equals a times b to the x. And this is our generic equation that we want to use over and over and over again with these problems. Now, a and b both represent different things in our situation. And just to recap, x is always the input, y is always the output. So a here represents what we like to call the initial value. And sometimes you can refer to that as the starting point or the zero term, but I'm just going to refer to a as our initial value. And b here represents what we call the multiplier. And another word for multiplier can be growth rate or sometimes decay rate if we're losing or going down. So it's very important that when we're solving these problems that we can identify what the initial value and the multiplier are in each situation. So let's look at an example of how we can use this equation, this generic equation, to help us solve a problem. So let's say that I bought a brand new iPhone and the iPhone cost $800. Okay, brand new iPhone cost me $800 when I went to the store and bought it. Now, let's say that this iPhone is going to depreciate. Remember, depreciate means that the value is going to go down and that it depreciates at 3% every year. So every year it goes by, this iPhone is losing 3% of its value. And let's say I want to know how much this iPhone is going to be worth after 5 years. Okay, so our biggest goal here is that the first thing we need to find out is what's our initial value and what's our multiplier. So I'm going to move this up a little bit just so we can get and see a little more space. I need to figure out my initial value. So let's go ahead and write out the equation. I know I'm going to have y equals, that doesn't change. And now I need to figure out what my initial value is. Well, the iPhone cost $800 when I first bought it. So that was its starting value, or that was its initial value. So this 800 here represents my a variable, my a term. So instead of writing a, I'm going to write 800. Now, the next step is to figure out what our multiplier is. Now, our multiplier is what's going to inform us on whether or not we're going up or we're going down, and how much that's going to be happening every month, week, year, whatever. Well, here we learn that this iPhone is depreciating at 3% every year. Now, before you run and quickly try to type in here 3%, that is incorrect. We can't just throw the 3% in there. We need to first switch that to a decimal. And here's how we switch the 3% going down every year into a decimal. Let's realize that we start off at 100%, right? Whatever we're starting with, my iPhone has 100% of its value. I know that it's losing 3% every year. So 100% take away 3% would give me 97%. That means that every year the iPhone is only worth 97% of its old value. Now, I have 97%, but I want to turn this into a decimal. And to turn that into a decimal, all we have to do is move this decimal over 2 spots. And so it becomes 0.97. That is my multiplier, and that's what needs to go in here for our b term, 0.97. And I'll throw the x back up there as well. Now, before we can solve this, the last thing we need to determine is what is our x value here? Well, it's asking how much is this iPhone worth after 5 years. 5 here is going to be my x value. Okay, I want to plug in 5 for x because that is how many years I want to know the iPhone is going to be worth. So instead of writing this x right here, instead I'm going to write a 5 And I'll go ahead and highlight that so you can see how that turned into that. And now I have an equation, y equals 800 times 0.97 to the 5th power. All we have to do now is just use our calculator and plug that in so we can see what the value is. So y equals, after 5 years, my iPhone will be worth $686.99. I'm going to go ahead and put a $sign in front. And that's a way for you to show and model what the iPhone will be worth after 5 years, just by using our generic exponential equation. So just to recap, on every single problem that involves exponential equations, what you want to find out is your initial value, your multiplier, and then your input, and that will give you your output. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.